attendance. Okay, so as we had discussed, I sent an email and everyone sort of agreed. This evening, we've got a representative from PRI with us. They had come and presented to the beautification committee on the meeting. I think it was last Monday, roughly the Monday previous. And I thought for our meeting, we had so many things going on that to try to squeeze something of this magnitude in, it would take the meeting out beyond normal bounds. So I had requested from the commission to allow us to break up the meeting into 2 different meetings. And that's kind of where we are today. And as a result of trying to make sure that we're ready, and these guys, from any input that we have today, coupled with any other input they may have getting from staff meetings, and have plenty of time to prepare, make changes so that the board can then look at this next Thursday, so that we can stay on schedule. So also joining us online is Freddie Beshmudi, I believe. Freddie, you with us?
I am certainly here.
Thank you for joining us. Freddie is our main consultant for helping us with the CDBG. She's been with us now for, I know you've worked with the village for many years, but
could you get rid of a few of those minis?
Oh, sorry, I meant very few years.
Thank you very much.
She's been here with us for I think it's almost been what, 1.5 years now?
About, yes.
Yeah, so this was a big challenge for the board, and so she's been a big part of helping us sort of kind of coagulate our ideas and make sure that we get in line with the government requirements in order to get access to that. We also have, I think, Brad Sanderson. Are you with us?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening, Brad. So Brad is the BDC doesn't interact with Brad all that often, but just for the reference, Brad is a representative of Engineering Enterprise. They are the engineering company that we work with. Pretty much all things engineering, whether that's stormwater, wastewater, and obviously we're going to be doing some pretty significant street work here. And so he's here to provide his expertise on that as well. And my apologies, Walter, I don't know what your last name is, but would you mind introducing yourself to the group?
Daryl.
Daryl, sorry.
I was wondering if I was Walter tonight, but okay. Yeah, my name is Daryl Garrison. I'm president and principal of a director of landscape architecture with Planning Resources.
Thank you, Daryl, for joining us. And I know that you endured a very long meeting the last time we got together. My goal was to keep that from happening again. So you will be the first and only thing on the agenda. So at this point, I'd like to, unless Josh or Jay has anything, I'd like to kind of turn it over to what's that? We're going to do minutes on Monday, just because we're going to keep all the business in the business end, and that's okay unless I'm breaking the law. Who knows, I've done that before, not on purpose. But at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Daryl. Daryl, if you could, what you have in front of you is 2 different concepts. I'll let Daryl get into it, but this is part of us getting our application for the community development block written. And so in order to apply for that, we need to have a formal, basically concept plan laid out. And Daryl will, I'll sort of turn that over to you, Sarah, and you can kind of walk us through what you and your team have put together.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to come and talk with you guys, and at least about what we have been working on, coupled with engineering resources as it relates to the development of an overall streetscape enhancement project for your downtown State Street. I'll try to keep it brief for the most part, and so we can have time for questions. Can everyone hear me?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And everyone can see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I'll get started. From our perspective, we felt the core focus area of the downtown streets should be the corridor area between Jefferson Street and Washington Avenue. While we did take a look at a cursory look at the entire 4.5 block area there, beginning at Jackson, all the way down to Keys, again, we felt that the the main area of concentration should be the area between Jefferson and Washington Avenue. As a matter of fact, we saw this area being the go-to location for special events. I mean, it's the one that definitely signifies you're in downtown Hampshire. And this way, that it would be a place where you could hold your summer dance, outdoor markets, street fairs, athletic events, village Christmas, Santa events, whatever. It would be the go-to area there that could be blocked off or and designated as the festival space, the festival boulevard there in Hampshire. So one thing we did, a lot of our concentration, as I said, we focused on that area. So due to the current roadway width, angled parking that you have now, you have angled parking on both sides, but we took a look at it and wanted to propose angled parking on one side. We wanted to limit it to one side of the street and in the Festival Boulevard area. And again, that's the area between Jefferson and Washington. We introduced parallel parking on the opposite side of the street, which would be the west side of the street, so that we could yet maintain the minimum roadway dimensions while also buffering the pedestrians from the street traffic by allowing parallel parking on that west side. That did create that separation from the sidewalk to the actual roadway when cars are parked there. We introduced 2 permanent mid-block landscaped areas. Even though they're very narrow, what they will do is, in addition to some intersection treatments, they're going to calm the traffic. They'll slow the traffic down a little bit while yet providing the green landscape buffer between the sidewalk users and, yes, the traffic there along State Street. These permanent mid-block landscaped areas, we exchanged greenery and landscaping for a small reduction in parking spaces. So in other words, within that block, yes, we did lose approximately 6 parking spaces, but we do know that the village has a couple of municipal surface lots in and around pretty much adjacent to this particular block on Rhine, just off Rhine, and then of course east on Washington there. The sidewalks there, because the condition of those walks look pretty good, we're saying that those walks could remain in place and intact. We may have to do some infill or some patchwork here and there, but we would saw cut it out and introduce a couple new areas. But other than that, the sidewalk appeared to be in good condition. So they will be left in place in that in and along that particular corridor area. And as it relates to the corner intersections, we see the intersection of Jefferson and State Street as being the overall gateway into the festival space. That would serve as the major gateway, with the block prior to from Jackson serving as the transition space, the transitional area from the residential to the overall downtown core main business district there. So once you're coming through that transition, you run into the you're definitely introduced with a major impact there of the intersection, which boasts concrete pavers, different paving patterns there at the intersection, as well as bulb outs, we call it. These bulb outs, they provide traffic calming as well as they allow shorter distance for the pedestrian to cross the street, because we're definitely out in the street a bit for the most part, while yet preserving the parking distances that are there. These intersections would have some landscaping. We have street trees that would be selected. The selected street trees are the ones that would be stemmed up, and they're the ones that are able to withstand urban harsh conditions, such as what we all have here in the Chicagoland area, as you know. There would be lighting bollards at these intersections to create some interest, excuse me, as well as there would also be concrete, I'd say, introduced in and throughout the various paving areas and lighting there. In the one area, I guess we could say the north and the east quadrant there, what you see there in these brick paved bulb outs, the village has a vintage time clock that we are proposing to be relocated, or to be located actually at that intersection on the north and east quadrant there. This time clock would serve again as the gateway feature for all the special events that could occur and would be occurring within the Festival Boulevard space there. So that would definitely signify again a sense of arrival into what could be a pretty high dynamic space there. Safety is a concern, so we definitely are making sure that each one of these intersection treatments are ADA accessible uh, and barrier free for the most part. You may be looking in that festival space and see a lot of diamonds. Well, we felt like, and not that the buildings are too high, but sometimes when you're in an exterior environment, especially with no trees, we wanted to bring the area down to human scale, again, to make it more warm and inviting. So in order to bring it down to human scale, we introduced a cable string lighting system. They call it a catenary string lighting system. And we introduced that to direct the lighting onto the overall Festival Boulevard area there. And of course, by doing that, it lowers the ceiling to more of a minimum 20-foot height. So it would be high enough for trucks as well as other vehicles to yet traverse through without obviously negatively having an incident or impacting the overall light feature there as well. But yet, the key is it would create the ambiance. It would definitely create the ambiance that would enhance the overall pedestrian experience when these events took place. We would also introduce street poles, street poles at 26 foot in height into the scheme to provide the structural support for the overhead cable lighting system, which could house, of course, theme banners and other seasonal elements, such as what the street lighting would do and could do. The period style poles and fixtures are used in combination with the period bollard lighting style that we previously mentioned that could be and we propose at the intersections. I will also be going through what these elements look like on the representative image sheet toward the end of this presentation, though. I just want to get through the main elements here first. We're looking into some movable planters that could be introduced so that in the event you are having an event, you're having a special featured event out there, the planters could be adjusted and relocated for either traffic control, meaning pedestrian traffic control, or other. But it yet would just create overall enhance the environment there in this what we're calling Festival Boulevard space by creating green mixed in with the overall hardscaping that is yet present there. And lastly, as I mentioned, we did take a cursory look at the block to the south of this area, and of course to the couple blocks to the north, all the way to Keys. The intersection of Jackson Street and State Street, as I mentioned, would serve as that transition zone for the overall corridor enhancements. Minimal improvements. But where possible, we'd introduce some brick paved areas to kind of mimic what could perhaps be introduced at the intersections, and minimal landscaping where possible at both ends. I want to direct your attention to this is just a view of what the area from Washington to Keys. I don't want to focus much on it, but just to show that we did take a cursory look at what could be introduced along the corridor that would yet enhance and carry the theme from the festival corridor northward to Keys. Now we do have some elements here, the representative imagery elements that we're recommending or proposing. The overall festival overhead festival lighting that I mentioned, the cable string lighting. This is an example of what it could look like. These two images here, one of these is taken from Ithaca, New York, where they have the string lighting, and you can see the ambiance that's created when you're having special events, while yet you can see the combination of street light poles that flank the perimeter along the sidewalk. This is an example of the street lighting poles that we're recommending, 26-foot height, and the period lighting style that could yet enhance the area and pick up on the character of the structures or the downtown theme that's there, character that's there, obviously with banners flanking this one side of it. The overall bollards would mimic that, polished black. The bollard lighting would be and could be shown at the various intersections. There's an example of the planters that we were the movable planters that, as we mentioned, yet can provide that softscape while yet working well with the overall hardscape elements there within the Festival Boulevard space that could be moved around and again shifted depending on what type of event that is taking place. This is just an overall view of what that clock would look like if it were when installed on the northeast quadrant, presenting that overall gateway sense of arrival to the downtown core. And I did fail to mention on the plan, but these are two elements here, are two fountains, water features, we'll say, that we're introducing or we're proposing, and I failed to show you where they were. Sorry about that. I'm going to go back to this area here within the overall festival space, flanking the terminus at the north end, just north of Washington Street. Again, we're proposing, these are yet bulb outs that present traffic calming, but as you know, this is a funny shaped intersection, but we're trying to work with it. And it's more unique, I guess we should say, but it does present a good opportunity as a terminus for the overall festival space, because within this space, where we decorated it or have brick installed, and some other elements, it could be the overall staging area for the whatever that event may be, our key area. So this is the library here. We're showing a water feature at the terminus here of the overall festival space. So that's where that would be, and that images, again, not sure exactly what style to go with. But at least one that provides the sound of water movement. And anyone knows that water in a downtown area, especially if you can hear the sound of it, it presents an overall calming atmosphere, overall adds to the overall atmosphere. So these are just two examples of what the fountain could look like. And what you're seeing here, they're odd shape, but nevertheless, we also were recommending some public art perhaps on the north end of the at the terminus of the festival corridor. That area then would be, if this is a festival corridor here, across right in this area here is where we could see art sculpture. And those two that are shown are just two examples of what could be, whether they were mosaic or not, just something that resonates with the community. It would be something that you could commission an artist to do based off some historical events, or just something that's significant to the residents of Hampshire. And maybe an egg isn't, but it's just the overall idea of some type of public art that could be permanently installed in that location. All right. So I believe, yeah, those are the various elements that are there, or at least that we're proposing and recommending be considered for what we're calling the overall streetscape. But as you can see, the majority of where our focus was that festival block area there, beginning with the intersection of Jefferson and State, and then going northward for one block to Washington. All right. Did anyone have any questions as it relates to the overall design idea, the design elements that were selected?
Yes, go ahead, Susan.
I just have a question. I'm sure it's already been covered, but with the string lighting, is that going to be, of course, high enough for semis who would have to be using that street?
Yes, it would. We're in talking with the manufacturer, minimally 20 foot in the air, where the lowest point, which is the center sag part for the most part, would be minimally 20 feet from pavement elevation to the bottom of the fixture.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So one question that has always been, or one topic that's been widely discussed is parking. I really like the rendering. Personally, I think that parking concept, if it was flipped, where parallel was on the east side of the street and the diagonal spots are on the west side of the street. The reason for that is most of the traffic that turns onto State Street come from the east, both on Washington as well as Jefferson. And when there are angled cars, it's hard to see oncoming traffic. Where if it was parallel, you'd have better line of sight into the traffic coming.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a big issue. The other thing is, obviously, we are constricted based on existing dimensions of the street. And I know that right now, the rendering has stated that it's 19 feet from the front of the curb to the stall depth. Most trucks are at about 20 feet in length, if not longer. So I'm wondering, would it be feasible to put together maybe a 30-degree parking to allow those spots to be a little bit deeper, knowing that probably going to sacrifice some spots, but safety is a concern of having vehicles that are hanging out into the street. Maybe something for us or the board to consider is there's a lot of open space on the north side of Rin Avenue, which is just north of the Firestone gas station, right next to the train tracks. Yeah, right there. It's a big open spot, and that would maybe be a potential area for angled parking all the way down to the street. That's the next street that runs north south. Knowing that if we're talking about losing some spots, that might want to be considered. There, if you were to go out there now, it's a pretty deep spot. I mean, you'd be able to put angled parking all the way up to the next street, which I don't know. And I don't necessarily know what the road easements are, but right here, all the way up.
Oh, rain?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's all empty. It's green grass. It'd be great to just put angled parking all the way up there, and then you could have something like this. But parking has been widely discussed for a long time.
Was there a reason that you chose the angled parking on the east side of the street over the west?
As it relates to the design idea, no, it just seemed as we were coming into the space, or as I come north from the south to the north, that seemed to be the more dominant way to me, just as someone coming in, a visitor coming into the space. But I guess it could work either way. I think that the amount of spaces are going to remain the same, whether it's one side or the other. Yeah, I don't think it's going to affect.
I'm just proposing. I mean, I do have a concern about cars hanging out into the street. Unfortunately, our streets are not that wide. I do know if you go at a more shallow or angle, you reduce spots, but you can obviously get vehicles deeper into a spot.
Yeah.
Maybe that's an option.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about parking also. This is Elaine. On the section between Jackson and Washington, maybe I'm reading wrong, but are we also losing spots on the one side of the parallel parking on the other side also?
On the,
Because there's no nearby parking for people who use spots there, and that will negatively impact businesses, our business for sure.
right.
They're carrying heavy machines and stuff.
Yeah. So this
There's
fall.
nowhere for them to go.
Yeah, so they were able to put the angled spots on the opposite side of the street and make the.
They still, and if they put it like by AT&T, am I reading? I'm not.
No, putting it on this side of the street where we're at now right now.
Yes, that would help.
And I says, first of all, This is not in your block. This is in the block to the north.
I'm talking about my block though.
Yeah, but in your block, there's no plan.
Am I, okay, that's why I'm questioning. Am I not reading it right?
No,
Because it
that's
looks
right.
like there's-
That is.
Jackson to Jefferson, that's where she's at.
Yeah, but
But there, and is there parallel parking then? Are we losing able to park?
let me just, there's one thing I want to say, and Brad is on here too, but I think door to door, we're 57 feet versus the standard 60 feet. So we are very narrow downtown, so we have definitely limited. Not to mention that we have some pretty unsafe conditions right now. So I think they were more concerned about safety. And Brad, you might want to speak to this, but we've been more concerned about safety and probably having to find other parking off State Street somewhere else. Sure.
And that's actually my point. I mean, it makes sense because the parking's, it's bad and it is dangerous. But, we need some kind of auxiliary parking for that and also because, the extra parking, I think is more towards the other end. That's not feasible for this.
If I could add, one of the impetus behind this was with this being the transition corridor, I will say, from the residential to the overall downtown, we saw that west side in particular as being very narrow and kind of restrictive for it to be coming into an area of, I'll say, wow, you're coming into downtown. I think the sidewalk there is about maybe 4 foot, if that, in width. And then if you have cars overhanging, because there is no curb for the most part, it seems to be flush. But then you had car stops. We all know that when you use car stops, that front of that vehicle can and usually does extend at least 1.5 feet, maybe even 2, depending on what it is, into that space. So what we wanted to do was, by introducing parallel, we were able to come out into the street a little more, meaning come eastward and expand that walk perhaps by an additional 3 feet. So now you have more of a wider approach in that area, and then kind of steal a couple spots, I call it, but using tree grades where we could get some greenery in there on that side of the street and a little on the other side to kind of channel the eye, leading to the explosive, what I call the main center of attraction, which is, as I mentioned, Jefferson Avenue, at Jefferson and State into the Festival Boulevard. That was the overall impetus behind that.
I mean, there could possibly be, you're concerned. I agree. You could always have conditional parking, a couple spots in the building where it's in front of your building. So businesses that have concern about parking, right, could have conditional spots potentially, say, loading, unloading, something like that, where.
Then there'd be no place to go, is what I'm saying. I think we need to take into consideration that when those areas are full, they park in front of the houses. And they park down the block, they spill over right into the residential and park right there along the road. So I agree we need to do something about that. That's a horrible situation. I just think that we need to keep in mind that they need some kind of municipal or some kind of extra parking available to that end of the block, because they're not going to use the other one, any of the other parking. It's not feasible. They can't, it's too long a block for them. Anybody facing the center. They're going to see that center portion as the transition, and that's for there. There just needs to be some thought to where they can park on the center, especially as more businesses go. Right now, we're fortunate. We've got AT&T. There's nothing.
Right. So do you find your customers tend to use that east side parking and then just walk across the street?
Not as much.
Okay.
They will if there's nothing, but they're all U-turning. So it's the parking right.
So maybe there's a way we can come to an agreement with some existing businesses and their lots. Because from my perspective, the parking situation downtown it's in a point now where we have more spots that's now compromising safety, right? And so we have to, if we can address the safety concerns, maybe we can work with businesses in town. Say, like, if you're, non-business hours can use this, or if you have it open lot, I don't know. It's not a.
There's not I just wanted to bring that up. That there's nowhere for them to park. There's nowhere to park. They won't use this. It's too
I do.
And Daryl, if I can interject, I mean, I think we did a parking survey about 18 months ago to 2 years ago. And sort of the takeaway was, parallel on one side, angled on the other side, or all parallel. Is it from just, Jay, you had referenced 60 feet versus 57 feet. I mean, we're of the opinion that parallel or angled on both sides is just not likely to be an option.
Given the constraints that you have, distant dimension-wise, yes, angled on both sides. Since you are concerned, we're discussing safety, it should not even be considered. Yeah, I think you really, as moving forward, are going to have to do one or the other, or at least parallel on one side in the various blocks that you're considering.
And from an industry perspective, it's sort of what are norms, acceptable norms and preferred norms. Given our distances, is the angled and the parallel within standard, having parallel on one side and angle on the other side, within industry standards?
It's not uncommon. That's correct. It's not uncommon to see that in some of those more older areas where they didn't have the width, the overall right-of-way widths to work with.
Okay. So, yeah, so kind of basically got to pick parallel on one side and it's just a matter of which ones end up where. Because we don't want to totally gut parking downtown.
No, you don't.
I mean, businesses need that parking. There's no doubt about it. It's nice to have the lots. I do like the idea though of off a rent. I don't know who owns that, but it is kind of just a no man's land.
I was under the impression that.
Ryan, I can comment on ownership. It's actually the railroad that owns the majority of that open space.
Okay.
That's something that I had thought of as well and had looked into. So whether or not we can negotiate with the railroad, it's probably most likely we cannot, but it is mainly a railroad property.
Okay.
We also discussed the fact that they sell that railroad about twice a year, so they probably won't know if we're parked there anyway.
Right.
Right now it's Canadian Pacific.
Yeah. And do any of their management people ever get on the trains and ride? What's going on?
I have talked to them a couple times. We have a contact.
Cool. No, I think that was a really sharp idea. All the people who thought of it, I think is, because that's proximate enough to downtown, I think, to be functional. Okay, any other thoughts on, what do we think about, now we had, in the beautification committee, we had a long conversation. What do we think of the overhead festival lighting, the light canopy? Thoughts?
Nice.
I absolutely. The reason being is we don't have a gathering place in the village. We just don't. You can't just develop and innovate and all of a sudden. But that being said, I could really see us putting together programs. If we were to get to this scale, Memorial Day to Labor Day, every Saturday night from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Between Jefferson and Washington is shut down. And then you allow street vendors, businesses. That makes Hampshire extremely different than every other town.
We tried to do that during the pandemic and our restaurants didn't want us to do that.
Really?
Well, that is, yeah.
Well, the problem is parking. The problem was not having enough parking spaces. And people are worried about people already being put off by all of this. All right, okay, so now are we gonna put up another obstacle for them to be like, well, I can't park in front and grab my food. I have to walk down the street, and Rose Garden was another one that was.
So assuming post-pandemic.
Yeah, post-pandemic.
We're able to negotiate or have some other parking options.
Right, because I love this. I love the lighting. I love the whole idea. Like, I'm not against having.
I mean, out of all
festivals
the
and all.
businesses downtown, you're designed for it, right? You can throw up the garage door and you could,
Right.
there you go.
Right. Great.
This again, I mean, this could really carve out something so unique for Hampshire. Yeah, it's hard not to get excited about the potential of this project. And I do applaud you all from PRI standpoint, Daryl. I think you're the only one here representing that this vision. I love how it goes more subtle down as you head north. Because one of the things we talked about is what would our continuation of Main Street be all the way down the road?
Mm-hmm.
This is not, in my opinion, it's not unattainable. it's not so drastic to where we're like, there's no way we could ever do it. You know, if we had brick pavers all the way down, maybe that would be a little bit more difficult, but I think that's great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, guys, I've seen something similar in a couple of other areas. Like there's a cute town in Florida. I mean, it's so charming and fun and festive, and it just makes it feel like it's, in my opinion, just a really special place to go to. I mean, it's funny how something like lighting can just make something feel so endearing. So,
Yeah, I know.
good job.
I loved it at the jump.
So, Mr. Chairman, is it time to throw a little cold water on the party here?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I'm,
Doesn't he look like he's ready?
yes, exactly. And we're all here because our goal is to find ways around obstacles. That's our job. So, Daryl. Walter. I called you Walter earlier, now it's not caught in my head. You also put together Plan B, which for whatever reason didn't make it through my packet. Did we eliminate Plan B, or are there things in that we gotta get to the numbers? Go ahead. I'd like you to kind of share that with them too, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
Brian, what we asked Daryl to do since the last meeting, in fact, I think it came up at the end of your meeting.
Yes.
Was kind of take the advice of the beautification committee, and this takes that advice.
Okay, so we don't have to, because there's some other, I just didn't want to make sure we had some.
Any of the options, any of the features that are on the feature page that you all have can be substituted or added or taken out.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, something.
In a couple things, again, this isn't where it gets down to the hard things, but whether the clock is at the north end or the clock is at the south end, whether the paver looks like, what does Jeannie call it? Compass bloom or something?
So the pattern that inlay or whatever.
Yeah. So, there are a couple options, obviously, when we get to the point of, obviously approval things, we want to talk about those things. So, okay. I appreciate you guys doing that. It does sort of shorten things up a little bit. So at this point, I think, unfortunately, let's talk numbers and let's see. One of the things during beautification committee that we had requested is that we get some hard numbers to see what is this all cost. And Jay and Josh were able to do that. So let's
I'll just say one. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, yeah, go ahead.
And Josh. Sure.
Daryl, can you stop sharing your screen so I can take over, please?
Oh, yes.
Now, let me just say that another thing the beautification committee mentioned, and also the BDC, we first talked about this, is make sure we handle the infrastructure. Let's not just let's get it on the paper. So unfortunately, we're going to share with you first some of the infrastructure costs, and Brad is on the line obviously to answer those questions, but Josh is going to share a spreadsheet with you here to show you some options. Daryl, can you stop sharing, Daryl?
Oh, my bad. Yes. There you go.
Okay, everybody. Okay. So this is a pretty simple spreadsheet. First in the column A there is everything that PRI and EEI came to us and said, these are the things that you need or the things that you might want. And then there's associated costs right next to them. Beyond that, there's what I'll call base 1, 2, and 3. They're not really options you have to choose from. They're just kind of different starting points. And then you guys can talk, pick and choose, move stuff around. And we can do that in real time on this screen so that we can get good totals at the bottom there. The budget up at the top there, and that'll be $1,034,000. The first 4 items, engineering, design, architecture, water improvements, water main improvements, sidewalk repairs, are all that infrastructure that needs to get done first. And that's got to get carried into every single option. And then beyond that, I can start explaining these spaces, I guess. So the first one you'll see is concrete to festival block, so the actual roadway, and then do the 2 intersections on either side of it, which would be State and Jefferson and State and Washington. So that's pretty much what you saw in Daryl's proposal, was with the bulge outs and everything like that, the pavers and the intersections, and then asphalting everything else on either side going to the rest of the area. The second base is to do all of the intersections real nice like he had in the whole proposal with all the bulge outs and everything, but then do no concrete in the actual roadway, just have asphalt basically between all the intersections. The third actually came from Freddie Beth. And it is a little bit of a combination. It's to do the two main intersections that Daryl was talking about. And then she was able to add in a couple of the main features like the village clock and things like that. So from there, we can go back to pictures. I can put pictures next to numbers if you want to see them. And we can talk about all the rest of this stuff, which is a lot of the stuff Daryl talked about in the proposal.
So, Brad, I was reading an article and I heard that you guys got some pro bono work you gotta get done. Any chance that I'd really like to see that 200 grand go away. We could do a lot of work.
Ryan, I've been doing a lot of pro bono work already, my man. But no, this is going to take quite a bit of effort. So general rule of thumb from an engineering perspective, for a job like this, you're going to be between 16, 17% and 20% for design and construction engineering. Plus you have Daryl's landscape architecture time. It's anticipated there's going to be lighting work as well. So there'll be electrical engineering sub that'll have to be included as well as part of it. So this type of project is going to require a tremendous amount of detail to make sure everything is going to be built correctly, drained correctly, try to meet ADA requirements. We have to meet ADA requirements. That just requires quite a depth. So, at this level, we're talking about concepts and, we don't have a detailed proposal together because we're not at that stage. So we're estimating high, but, at this appropriate level, 20% is a reasonable estimate.
Okay, and that was really what I was kind of going for, is 20% pretty much word of the day when it comes to concept estimating.
Right, can I interject one?
Please.
I want to explain on the left side, we had a letter from EPI, but it was a little complex, so we tried to simplify it here. If you look at items starting with asphalt on number 7, that's $330,000. That's to asphalt the entire 5 blocks, 4 blocks, whatever it is, the entire area to grind it down, level it, and asphalt. So that's, if you want a nice looking street, that's the minimum cost. Now, the next 3 are components. So if you want to have a concrete festival block, that would not be the intersections now, just the block between the 2 intersections, okay? That's $100,000. Each intersection has a cost, put concrete and pavers in it. So if you look at these as components, you're talking about the 330 base for your asphalt. The cost for putting concrete in between is not $100,000, that's the difference. Okay, so they subtracted out the asphalt and added in the 100. So you have to add the 100 to the 330. Now you want to add both intersections. Maybe you can subtotal these for me if you haven't already. Yeah, do a subtotal. Yeah, well, they're right there. So if you take the intersection, sorry, the 330 and the pink, looks like pink over here, but I think it's actually yellow for you guys. And then the 320 below it, those are the 3 components. So you have the intersection, the concrete festival block, and then another intersection.
So you're talking
If you do all that, which is really the structural part of the street, that's already $100,000 over budget. Without any lights, without any fountains, without any art.
Yeah.
So now you can trade that. You can say, we'll just do black asphalt the whole way. And now you can eliminate those 3. It's kind of just delete those. And now you've got $300,000.
What you can get for 300,000.
Hey, you can get a lot of pretty things for that. So those are the big. Now we also talked earlier about just doing one festival point, one intersection, which could be the one at the corner right here, Jefferson and State. So just want to understand that part. The rest of the pieces are all pretty interchangeable, but those 4 kind of build on each other.
And do we feel like, I guess the 330 is the number that 5 blocks gotta get done? Is that what we?
No, that doesn't have to get done.
Because one of the things that we talked about is sort of taking and you and I actually have talked about this, I would imagine if it's 5 blocks is 330,000, then 1 block is, that's.
I would ask for that.
Right. is that, you know, I know it's not gonna be exactly divided by 5, but if we just focus between Jefferson and Washington on state, and sort of put all our resources just there, where does that 330 go? Is it still 330 or is it less?
No, you could just roughly divide it by 5, and that would be probably close enough.
Okay, I agree, that's much.
It's probably more like 4, 4.5 truly.
Yeah, right. No, I know there's some base level sort of just to get in the game costs and then, right, and then it's a person.
And
One of the, Ryan, this is Freddie. One of the things that I think we need to look at and need to take into account is that we're starting at a minimum with $1,034,000, which is what the CDBG closeout amount is. And the project that we want to get approved is a quote unquote streetscape project. And
Right.
Daryl did a good job of explaining that conceptually, PRI looked at a 4.5, 4 or 5 block area, but our focus for this particular project is that festival block. And that being said, we need to look at what is the best investment in the village, what's the best long-term investment in the village with these dollars, and what has the most impact on in the downtown area. And I think we need to think of that sort of as an overall umbrella over all of the add-ins and subtractions for what might want to be included. I think it's our job, meaning PRIs and EEIs and J's and Josh's and mine, we need to come up with a way to be able to make the budget work. We need direction from this committee in the form of a recommendation and from the village board. What is it you want to see in this downtown area? Where do you want the biggest impact to be? Do you want it to be just one block? Do you want it to be some impact on the 4.5 blocks with a real focus on the 1 block? How do you all want us to proceed? What of those additional items on Josh's spreadsheet from item 8 through 28, what of those do you think is going to have a really impact on the village? I think that's where we need to focus. And yes, we have to look at it from the perspective of $1,034,000 allocation of funds.
No, Freddie, that's perfect. And so I think I want to hear from the rest of the board, but something that we've kind of talked about, not only on our board, I've had some conversations, is one of the things I've learned from being in government for 3.5 years is, you know, promises of the future don't always come true, right? Funding is not always there. So what I think I would like to see, and I want to hear it from the rest of the board, but this just as one member of this board, whatever we do, I want done. So if it means focusing sort of laser into 1 block and allows us to finish that block, I would rather do that than take and spread it out over 5 blocks with the hope, oh, this is phase 1. And then eventually we'll get to phase 2, because my fellow commissioner, Bill Swalwell, can speak, I think, with the most. 2004, we went through all this other stuff, and then the village never found the money to do that. And so I would like, you know, and so I want to hear from, but that's my opinion. I would like to take all of that energy and all of that opportunity and put it into a smaller area and bring that way up, right? And then hope, you know, over time, that sort of then jumpstarts something that maybe sort of connects more businesses, whatever it is. I think as opposed to doing vanilla over a bigger surface, I'd rather do Rocky Road in 1 spot, you know? And that's the way I look at it. I'd rather go chocolate mint for you, Neapolitan, Spumoni, whatever you like. You know, so that's my thing. But I mean, Susie, Dave, Elaine, Ian,
I
Bill.
completely agree. you've gotta do something that people notice. If you just do a little bit here and there, people don't notice.
Right.
I would totally agree. That said, I still think we can probably be very specific with what's proposed here.
Absolutely.
And like, there are some things that might just be a little bit too much at this point. And if we find that, yes, if we go with laser focused and we recommend like this could be it, we might find a little bit additional to do something else.
Yes. Yeah, if we get to the point we've got like, trapeze artists going over, like maybe broaden out the money a little bit, right? If we get to the point where we're going, yeah, I get what you're saying, is if we run out of what we think is reasonable and we still have extra money, then let's start to build out.
Yeah.
But I would like to kind of finish that work, right? Kind of what we're talking about.
Even if it's something like just small, with like planters with flowers, I mean, something that says that this is part of it, but,
Right.
Instead of it just being like a cutoff, it's like, oh, you're the good Samaritan. But I do think
The good
you can
Samaritan.
do it inexpensively,
Yeah.
and still make it really look nice.
I would-
I agree with you.
Just one comment, because it came up in an earlier staff conversation.
Is now joining.
We talked a little bit about adding lights later, adding things later. Lights, electrical things, lights, all that stuff has to go in now.
Yes.
And the same would be true for sidewalks and pavement. And then we don't want to have to come back later and try to add lights. So unfortunately, the expensive stuff is what has to go now. It's the smaller items that we might be able to find $10,000 in 3 years for a fountain.
Sure.
We won't find $90,000 to add overhead light.
I have a question, and I could be totally off base here, but my understanding was that you didn't want to stay in this building as Village Hall, and eventually you wanted to move. So, well, right there, I'm looking, well, you don't need a paper interest in this building because it's not always gonna be the Village Hall. So I'm thinking there's things there like
Yeah.
the water feature, the art sculpture, those things, we could just cut those out because those are amenities that we don't have to have.
Mhm.
Can we go through line by line as group and just agree or not agree and then just pull up?
Yeah, I'm absolutely fine with that. Just one quick question, because it's just jumping up to before we go that. And Ian, just your thought, you said yes, did you believe sort of focusing energy on one area? Bill, I know we've talked about that, you feel the same way, agree. Could talk about stormwater improvements. Are we kind of doing the work we have to do sort of because we have opportunity, or is that stormwater work in the downtown area? If Brad, maybe address that, because that's a big number.
Yeah, I can certainly speak to that. So the existing infrastructure, there are areas that are in decent shape, but there's several sections of pipe that are not in good shape. So those repairs and replacements really should be made now. You don't want to put in new asphalt or new concrete and then have to dig it up later to repair it. So now is the time. The other thing is that, the level of storm sewer depends on the level of improvements. So if there's blocks that are going to be taken off, the net number will come down. But, with the addition of the bulbs and the changing of the parking and things such as that, there's going to have to be additional storm sewer installed just to be able to make it drain. So it's a conservative number, but it depends on the length of the project. But there are some things that definitely need to be addressed.
No, fair. That's a great point. And I think as a group, stormwater is a massive issue. So we do not want to add to that issue by shortchanging it. Okay.
I was gonna ask really quickly, do any of those infrastructure improvements help some of the existing problems with the businesses that are downtown? I've always heard.
Are you talking about flooding?
Yeah.
That's done. That's just bad rumors going around.
Okay.
Really?
We checked all that out, with the exception of Palmazanos, who nobody seems to be able to get hold of. We televised all the downtown just in the last few months, so there are no problems with flooding or drainage. Even in both the big rain events we've had in the last May, we had zero drainage down. I mean, zero, even puddles, there weren't even puddles on State Street.
Okay.
So yeah, downtown is draining great, and the problems with the businesses are fixed.
Fantastic.
Great. Okay.
Just, what about the back? Like in back by us, on the room there, thought that there was a problem in that alleyway,
I don't know, I'm just speaking to State
just on
Street.
State Street, okay.
That's all we're dealing with really here.
Oh, okay.
Like, we have a whole, next Thursday board meeting, and again, we'll be talking about all the big issues of flooding.
Okay. I know I missed that on the 18th.
So David made a recommendation, Daryl, if you're gracious enough to accommodate the request, is we kind of want to just look at kind of step line through line and just sort of as a group sort of thing, yeah, kind of things that are, maybe why don't we give it to, can we make it easy for these guys and do like a 1 to 3 scale? Like 3 absolutely want it, 2 okay, and 1 not, just instead of saying yay or nay, we can sort of give some.
Or we can just discuss.
We can just talk about it and they can take notes. We can do that too, either way.
Ryan, is it clear what Josh has done with the new column D?
Yes.
So he's just put in $73,000 was an estimate to just asphalt that one block.
Yes,
So now if you want to drop in an intersection, you can drop in all the pieces you want.
right. It's my favorite column, by the way. And it's got our name on it, guys.
You just changed the name
You
for
just
you.
changed it.
Even better.
So the concrete festival block is just asphalting.
What does that mean?
That means putting actual concrete in front of all, like in the roadway between the 2 intersections, not including the intersections.
That's the incremental amount. That's the incremental cost to do that.
Yeah, I
So
know.
I'm gonna ask you to look at this in 4 different pieces. And they're all up here. The first piece is number 7. That's the baseline. That's for all 4 blocks. So that's 337. Then if you want to add just the concrete for the block in between the 2 festival corners, that's 100,000 for just the block. Then it's 100,000 for 1 festival block corner intersection. I think the other one's 130.
I guess the question was, what is the concrete work that's being done?
Sorry, what?
What's the concrete work that's being done?
It's, oh, you mean the specs?
Yeah,
Oh, I think is it 8 inches of concrete, Brad?
I believe right now we're estimating it at 12 inches.
Okay. Is that what's required for a roadway?
It'd be a typical, typical concrete roadway section, probably 10 to 12 inches. So yes.
Which would allow us to do some.
They would grind all the way down, remove all the asphalt, and then pour concrete.
So if we did number 8, number 7 would disappear.
Okay, that's what he's.
Those are incremental costs,
Okay.
except in the first column.
So Josh, right, except in the first column, because that 73 is specific
The
to
one
just
block.
that block.
I
Now,
understand.
the math that is done behind the scenes by EEI is that if you don't do any of the asphalting at all and you just want to concrete that one block, this actually turns to 150,000
Got it.
instead of 100. That makes sense. Is that correct, Brad?
Yeah, 100. It would be 175. Actually, you have that number, but it's exactly right.
So it's an adder to do the concrete.
Right.
everyone's feeling.
It's an extra. Is it necessary for the look?
But one of the things we didn't do, what about pavers? Is it the same cost or more money?
Well, first of all, pavers have to be in concrete, they can't be in asphalt.
So that
So
was,
they have to start with an intersection. You take an intersection, roadway. Take those 3 pieces and you
got it.
any one or all 3 of those. So the one at base 1 is basically saying we're gonna do all the infrastructure, do the road, concrete, both intersections really nice. We don't have any money left over even for lights.
Got it.
So does the concrete then include the pavers that are in?
Yes, includes the design or something similar like
Okay,
that. The
okay.
cost of the pavers and the bump outs and all that is included.
Is there any concern about longevity with pavers, this being a road service?
Just
Brad, do you have any thoughts on longevity of concrete versus asphalt?
Or pavers?
Or pavers inside of concrete versus asphalt?
Sure. So generally, asphalt's going to last 12 to 15 years before you're going to have to do a resurfacing or some sort of treatment. Concrete lasts longer. It's got a longer life cycle. It's also quite a bit more expensive. The pavers nowadays are pretty good. They're probably going to be similar to concrete, if not lasting a little bit longer. But you're probably going to have, potentially a little bit more maintenance ongoing. Maybe, you have to replace a couple here and there, or, that type of thing. And maybe a snowplow might hit them and that type of, so there might be a little bit of additional hands-on. But as far as longevity of blocks or of bricks, they last a long time. There's some in place that have been around for 100 years, that were put in 100 years ago.
I just think it's something special rather than you're not a street. You want to have street dances. Things like that.
Right.
That's my.
Well, you notice Freddie's line over in the far right, she took out the concrete festival block, but left the concrete at State in Jefferson State in Washington.
Just at the intersection.
Right.
Just the
To me, makes sense.
So you've got asphalt separated by your
Right.
concrete intersections.
Just cost savings.
Yeah, that's a thought too.
Is stamped concrete an option, or does it have to be an actual paver?
Stamp concrete could certainly be an option, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, because stamp concrete, you can make it look like the pavers if you want to.
Exactly.
It kind of is one of the newer directions that things are going. I think it gives you some options.
But that may run up your cost.
So do we have a preference between this? Okay, so it seems like one of the things I think is interesting. So let's limit what we're talking about to State and Washington, State and Jefferson, and then the street between them. Okay? If we were to say what we would prefer relative to intersections versus the street, does it have to be all, or can we break it up? And if we break it up, what would we prefer, the intersections or the actual street? Does that make sense?
I think it needs to be all.
All,
That's just my opinion.
between that area. What do you think, Bill? What are your thoughts?
If the budget will allow it, I'm all in for all. But what about if we start with the two intersections and then go down the list and see what puts us?
Yeah.
And then if we can swing it, by all means,
Yeah.
I think we should do all.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where we're gonna wind up.
When you say all, you mean concrete for all?
Between, for the two intersections, and we're just,
So just to be clear,
So
that's column
that's
E.
phase one.
That is column E.
Exactly what that is.
but that's 330 grand.
You're right, so
So
not
that's-
asphalting anything else.
Yeah. That's
So
why I
then-
have to.
So that would be that.
Downtown is our problem. The rest of it's someone else's problem. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
We're focused on downtown.
this.
So yeah, we don't want to spend 330,000 on concreting 2 blocks.
I'm not sure that's right.
We can help it. Help it. Okay.
You're right. I'm not sure. So it'll be just a little bit higher than that still, that 170.
Okay, let's come back to that, because I think we could get caught up, and those are the big ones. Let's go to the little ones, and then,
Okay.
so resurfacing the parking lot on Rin, is that per work scope in the project?
That I believe was recommended by EEI because you're taking away parking and directing it to these parking lots and make the parking lot restripe it, do some repairs, whatever.
It's like everything else, it's just an option.
Okay, I just didn't know if it
50?
fell within the scope of what we could use some money for.
Legally, it falls in the scope, but it doesn't have to.
Right.
So we can take that money.
Well, and I think till we get to maximum usage of the 2 parking lots that are next to the post office and the one behind, here, or,
At some point, people are gonna have to learn to walk downtown. They're not gonna be able to park right in front of the store they wanna go to.
yes, I agree. Okay, so I think that's pretty low on the priority list. Would we agree as a group, resurface and Rin, maybe not the lowest?
You need those, I'll put strike throughs to your lowest priority, so you can still see the number, but.
Bill's clock that's a have to have, correct?
I think so.
I think so.
Absolutely have to have.
Yeah.
I agree.
Decorative street lights.
You know what? We have some money in another budget for that. Ryan, it just occurred to me.
What are you?
For the clock.
Oh,
Yeah, so you can put 0 in for that.
yes.
Yay.
We do.
Now we're
Do you
talking.
have any extra money for concrete?
Will I have any more surprises?
I'm gonna say yes to everything you tell me.
Yeah, if you've got another budget, it's yes, always. Yeah, do you want, Dave, you gonna start, let's get our hands around the lighting question,
Yeah.
there's several line items there, what are we talking about?
It's like three.
Yeah, there's almost,
I know.
yeah,
So I'm gonna have, Daryl list the 3 different lights and how they interact.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. As it relates to the line item, line item 15, where it says decorative street lights, that's the area within the Jefferson State and Washington Avenue area, Washington State Street block. We can see as many as 6 lights, 6 of those 26-foot high lights in that area. And so that's would accommodate the 6 lights that we felt that were going to be around, that's 9,000 a piece. The overhead lighting is the cable lighting that we mentioned. That's the line item 17, I believe it is. That includes the fixtures themselves, the cable lighting, as well as the alternating, well, they're not alternating, but at least 10 structural support posts. The 6 lighting posts, the 6 posts that we just previously spoke of, street lights, are going to also be used to help string the lights from. In some communities, they strung the lights from the buildings and the facades. And we didn't think you want to go through that, having to negotiate or barter with whoever those owners are. So just create them independently. And so that's where the structural poles come in there as part of the overhead lighting. And that's what boosts that number up. And the decorative street lights, the other remaining are the block south of the Festival Block area and the 2 or 3 blocks north of that. That's to have at least, I want to say 6 of those lights as well. 3 on the south, or maybe 2 on the south, and then 4 on the north, all the way to Keys.
No, I get you. Okay, so line item number 16 is not inside the festival block.
It's not inside the Festival Block, correct?
Let me take that out.
Sorry, I was messing with technology.
So,
What do you want to take out?
Take out line 16.
Or just add 50.
I'll do something.
Is there any concern if we should probably have more discussions as a village if we're going to use the downtown as an ongoing festival place before we start talking about investing 90 grand in string lights, and we have one festival a year downtown? I mean, should there be more of a commitment to, or do you build it and they will come?
That was the actual exact.
I was thinking the exact.
Well, because I think for sure we got our relationship with the chamber right now is as good as it's ever been. We had that meeting, and I think because when you were talking about Memorial Day to Labor Day, right? When you said that, it kind of tied into a meeting. Remember that we had that meeting with Cassandra was here. We're talking about a bunch, trying to gear an entire yearly schedule around events. And I got to think that all kind of just pulls together, getting the farmer's market down there eventually, getting the street teams back up and going again. And, so I think that if you build it, they will come and you have good relationships with people. That's my opinion.
I'm good with that.
Are there any things you want to drag in column D yet that you're all for?
Yeah, I think the line 14, right?
16.
And 16.
Definitely. Yep. Why? Did we eliminate a line? Yeah. Okay, because I had 15 and 17 before. You just deleted a line. 14 and 16. Oh, yes, those are definites. Yes, I agree. Okay, what else?
What are the Ballard
Ballard lights, those are like this.
You have the pictures in front of you?
Okay. Oh, thank you.
I think we can leave those off for now. But will the wiring be there, so we could add?
No.
No?
Daryl, can you just speak to the Ballard lights and kind of the philosophy there?
Yes, you see that 2,000 there, that's saying 2,000 each, because obviously you can select or decide tonight how many you think you're going to need or would want, whether it's just limited or restricted to the gateway or the entrance to the festival block, are the entire corridor, at least down to the Washington area. We kind of had envisioned these bollard lights as not only to provide lighting, but they did provide some sense of, when I say structure, a sense of protection for the pedestrian when they're waiting for cars to pass as they're in these bulb outs. They do provide just a sense of security physically, as well as in that at night, that the overall lighting security, as well as the ambiance at the lower level. So at each one of the bulb outs, I think we had proposed three bollard lights at each one. At that main intersection at Jefferson, there would be 12, 3 each quadrant. However, you could limit it to just the ones going on the north side of that. And so you'd be possibly looking at 6. So that's 6 times 2, a total of 12 there. If you were also looking then at the Washington end block, the north end, we were looking at 3. Our proposed 3 bollards at the Washington on the north side of northeast side, no, southeast side. I'm sorry, southeast side of the Washington, and 2 at the southwest side. So you could stop it there if depending on where you wanted to be. That's a total of 5 additional. Or go ahead and fill out that entire intersection, which would be an increase of 5, 8. You'd be looking at another 10 total.
Those can be added later, right?
No.
The only way they could be added later is if you put the we'll say the infrastructure in during the time of the paving or the reconstruction of the road, meaning conduits, as to prepare in order to receive the lighting that's coming in.
Daryl, how much of that 2,000 is actually infrastructure as opposed to the light itself?
The light itself to purchase was around, if I recall, I'm going to say it was 1,500, 1,500 for that, because it's a steel light is what it was, or a column and all. So the bollard itself is about 1,500.
So that doesn't include the
Yeah.
$500 a ballard in the way of electrical if we were to put it underground now.
Yes.
Okay.
As long as the underground was already there, that's just to connect it and do whatever it needs to do.
So what does the group feel on the bollard light? Is that a have to have, like to have, or leave it off? Ian, what do you think?
Oh, I could give it a. Bill, what do you think?
I think we should come back to it.
Right, let's put it on the side, maybe a medium. It'd be nice to have, but you could.
I understand what they're talking about. I've seen them in downtown houses, some of the intersections of the work that they've done over the years, by the new library, and I can't remember where I saw them, but I understand what he's saying about the safety factor that it seems to add at a crosswalk.
Okay.
And if we're gonna do concrete at 2 intersections, Washington and Jefferson, we should at least consider it, but they're a little bit more expensive than I thought, and the count, we're talking about cutting it in half.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of set it aside.
So if there's money, when we, and this kind of, Ian, what you're saying is if we come back to it and we still have some money left over, it's nice to have, but it's not a have to have.
Yeah.
Dave, you think so?
If I could also add too, that's just the style, the period style we selected that would complement the lighting. So there's millions of manufacturers out there. We could also, depending on how much, we'll say dollars are left, if bollards are still something that's desired, we could, and you tell us how many you want, what intersections, we could also look for alternative solutions that are a little less expensive, but yet provide the same ambiance as well as and look that you're trying to create down there. Bollards come in a range of styles. Now, also, if you don't want the light, there are also bollards that are made without lighting. You can get some period style bollards that don't have the light, but yet provide that physical sense of security, as well as the look aesthetic wise that you're trying to create as well down there. They don't have to be lights.
And if there are no lights and there's no infrastructure that could be added later.
Yes. Just an alternate, just something to consider.
Any idea what those might cost per?
Again, it depends on the manufacturer and how many. Obviously, the larger the quantity, the cheaper the less expensive or the more economical they'll be.
It's gonna be expensive.
Yeah. Okay, street trees. I would assume 5,000 is for all the,
Only the ones at the intersections,
at the intersection?
at the festival intersection
Got it.
that we're showing there.
Zone 2.
And that
Just total,
Yes.
Daryl, would that be?
That also includes the installation of that, including making sure that there's imported imported amended soil so that it can grow. You can't just grow, especially in urban conditions like this. You can't just put it in just what people would say dirt. You got to make sure that the soil is correct and there's a proper drainage underneath it to get the water in and out, because you don't want them sitting in just water as well. So that's why they're a little more expensive than what you think, because it's a harsh urban condition that we'd be putting it in, and we want to make sure that they survive.
How many trees is that?
That is for 3 trees, since the clock would be at the other side. That's for about 3 trees. The trees themselves would be no more than $1,000, I would think, if we went with, again, that depends on you and the board. We would recommend maybe 3.5, something somewhat substantial. If you wanted something larger, obviously, it'd be a lot more costly. If you put anything in less than a 3.5, I would say, 1, it's not going to be noticeable. 2, it's going to take much longer to survive or thrive, because it's still young. It hasn't. It's not substantial enough.
Is that what he's talking about?
So I see 4 trees, 1 on each corner. Is that?
Yeah, that's how I don't know.
Yeah, Daryl, could you describe which 3 trees you're referencing, just for our own knowledge?
Yes, there at the intersection of Jefferson Street and State Street, there are 3 trees, 2 on the south side of that intersection and 1 on the northwest side of that intersection.
I see 4.
Oh, wait, we're looking at the one from last week. Did you change it?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Last.
Daryl, why don't you put that, or never mind, Josh should put it up here real quick.
All right, that's why we're.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I think.
That's because they.
We should look at the
Yeah.
all the landscaping. We're talking $11,000, not a billion. What do you think we should? I think we should try to do all that trees landscaping. For that, I mean, it's such a low amount.
We'd pull it all together.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay.
Where does the clock go?
Is that where the clock
Where's
is
the
then?
clock go?
On the other here?
The clock would go on the northeast corner in the same vicinity where the trees are on the south end.
In Bill, just because the clock is part of, what you've done and contributed, where would you like to see the clock ideally?
I think that's
You like it there?
He had proposed it before. Washington is one option and Jefferson is the other. Either one of them, as long as it's in the heart of the downtown.
Okay.
I think that's the deal where he's kind of.
Perfect, awesome, I think so too. Okay, so Josh, I think we as a group, would like to add that, the landscape trees into our list, Josh. Or, I don't know what you call it anymore. Karen, I'm sorry I haven't gone to you, sometimes I can't see that you're there, my apologies.
No, you're good, you're good. I'll
All right,
speak up.
thank
Maybe
you.
I made a mistake.
And then what is the street trees others then, Daryl? Is that just sort of north and south of our festival area?
That's correct. I know we don't have it up right now, and that's fine. The areas south, the 1 block area south, and the 2 or 3 blocks north, we did kind of show a few trees going in there. Should that be considered a future or so? That's the remaining balance, but that's something that doesn't have anything to do with the festival block area.
Okay. And hey, Josh, could you do me a favor, just for the sake of our conversation? Could you look at just sort of adding the concrete at State Jefferson and adding the concrete at Washington to give us a real number? So I keep looking at the 688,000 very excitedly, but I know that's gonna go. Yeah. So it gets us trees, lights, concrete at the intersections. And
So if you look here, I now am doing what I was trying to do on the screen, but you can only share one thing at a time through Teams.
you ain't gonna blow that up. Yeah, okay.
So what does that say?
I have no idea. What is it?
I mean, this is just a picture we were showing earlier.
Okay.
About landscaping.
Yeah, what's in the landscaping?
The landscaping in the festival block, if
Yes.
you recall, there's two mid-block islands that we kind of created to kind of separate, just to create some interest as well as break up the pavement. That's putting in landscape plant material there. Nothing too high, of course, because we got the overhead, we'll say cable lighting there, so you didn't want to introduce a lot of trees in that area, but yet some things to kind of break up the view, but yet provide a sense of comfort with greenery. So that 5,000 would cover landscape installation, landscape soil, as well as mulching those two areas.
Would this be like a raised bed, Daryl, the mid-street landscaping display, right?
Well, yes, it could be, yes. We could probably go a couple ways with it. You could turn it the other way, have it concave and turn it into a rain garden. But I think we had envisioned it being plants that were in upward motion where you can pretty much see it for the most part.
Yeah, well, and you're there. If we had concrete, the festival block, add the landscaping features, we're at $1,034,000-ish, give or take 4 or 5 grand at that. He's doing it right. And then add both the landscaping.
Both of them?
Yeah,
This is the
or
festival.
just a festival. Yeah. And we still we could put that water, what do we got?
What about the street trees? Isn't that part of the?
Again, so another thing is that because we changed the asphalt base.
Yeah,
Let's ask Brad about that. Okay. Hey, can I ask Brad a question?
Yes.
Brad, you can see the spreadsheet, right?
Yes.
I'm a little concerned about that 73 number.
Seems so.
Can you just take a look and see if we're close? It doesn't have to be exact, but are we close enough?
Yeah, let me look at the detailed spreadsheet. I'll do that while you guys are talking.
The other thing that I was going to mention is that because that base changed, the increments for those other concrete components also change. So, and we don't know what those are.
That's
just
fair.
the,
That's what I'm asking.
Whether, yeah, I get you. So whether,
Part of me would like to take
Base
that,
for all.
part of me would like to take that money, and if we're gonna be doing a block of ornate streetlights, it'd be a shame not to do the rest of the parts of the downtown that having old streetlights. So you go one block and we have old streetlights, you go a block. It's like boom, and then you go back to old streetlights again. It'd be nice to at least be able to have one common element through one or two blocks.
yeah, I think that's the hard one too, is the lightings. But the problem is, in order to do the lighting, you have to do the infrastructure too.
Which is the underground cabling and then the cost of the
Which is-
That's already there.
No, we scaled it back.
No, that's asphalt. Engineer or the, is it under sidewalk repair?
No. What's the question exactly?
So the wiring for lights, what line does it fall?
It's in the lighting stuff. Ask Brad, please.
No. Brad, what line item is the wiring for the streetlights?
Yeah, it would fall under the streetlights.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I would rather, instead of concreting in between the ornate intersections, I would like, my opinion is that all the streetlights in downtown should be the same. We shouldn't have 20, 30-year-old streetlights, then go to these really nice lights for a walk, then back to, that's my.
No, I think that's a great point, and I think it's a good point. The question is, if we sort of looked at both, no, it's a good point. It is, what's harder to do down the road? Is it sort of upgrading the rest of the lights, or is it converting that stretch between, I get what you're saying.
I think it's lights. The only reason being is at some point the street will fall into disrepair. that you will have to replace it, and at that point, you can update that section. At some point, it'll have to be resurfaced. And maybe at that point, you can have the conversation to sink a little extra money into it to.
Well,
Okay, that's a
what
good
if
position.
instead of doing 2 blocks on the side, we did the festival block? And then the part of the block that's in front of the library, because that really is an extension of that main street.
I think also taking into account this block too.
Okay,
That's my thought would be
What are we looking at? 55?
streetlights, 1 block to the south and 1 block to the north.
but to do that, they have to run the wiring, correct?
That's included in the price.
Which is not, I don't think it
I think
is.
we have to do the asphalt.
Let's get clarification on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Chat 'em out. Light fixtures on the other 2 blocks, right?
Right.
These 2 blocks?
Yeah.
Then, but that's a question for Brad as to what that would cost, because you're talking the fixtures and the cable to it. Right, so they're trenching the street, they're running, right, okay.
Aren't there already lights there though? I mean, it's the same wiring. We already have lights there.
There are lights already there. The question you're asking here, you speak to is where would the new ones be located?
Okay.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a
Oh,
question.
you're also asking, could we use the underground wiring for those?
Correct.
to do
That's
that?
exactly what it is.
Right.
I would say using the existing conduits and wiring is probably a problem. Those were put in the late 80s. So they already have substantial amount of age on them. So probably would recommend new conduits, new wiring. So, you know, the wirings, you can lump that into the cost of the light, but there will be ancillary costs, you know, either asphalt or concrete repair after the conduits are replaced. So there's a lot of variables associated with that. So once we get kind of clean direction, we can fine tune the costs. But you know, roughly, you know, if you want to add a few lights in, you know, just, you know, add those in and then we can fine tune it before next week.
Brad, if we were to look at the additional cost for the lights other than on the festival block, wouldn't the cost of the asphalt from one end to the other on the 4.5 blocks, wouldn't that be included?
If that's chosen, the current column D does not have that as a choice. So at least that's my understanding.
I can't see the spreadsheet, but
Yeah.
I guess my question is if they did all asphalt and then did the street lights as proposed, at the cost proposed, then all of those costs would be taken into account.
Yeah, but Freddie, just
Potentially.
here, we as a group have sort of kind of thought we weren't gonna do the 330,000, at least that was the opinion of this board, is not to do all that work. So the question is, if we don't do all the asphalting, what additional work is gonna be required in terms of concrete / asphalt in order to add the decorative streetlights other? One would think there's probably gonna be added costs there because I would imagine the 55,000 was a number that was estimated based on the fact that the street was already torn all the way up. Is that correct, Brad?
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah, if you're looking for a grab number today, you know, you can throw 15, 20,000 of additional, you know, either asphalt or concrete repair from the railroad tracks back to Jackson.
So I guess the question is concreting in between those 2 intersections more important than updating all the lighting through the tracks to the beginning of downtown?
One thing we haven't talked about at all is possibly keeping the current streetlights, but using the overhead lighting to create that ceiling.
Right, so not doing either the $55,000 numbers, just using sort of the change enough for the people of the overhead being enough and sort of for the time being.
Throwing that out there, there's one question I need to ask you. Hey, Daryl?
Yes, sir.
Is it possible, and I don't know if you know exactly where the lights are, but is it possible to hang the overhead lighting from the existing street lights, maybe adding a couple of poles if necessary?
Well, I think we've got the supplemental structural poles anyway that are going to be required. But that's in addition to if we added 6. If we did not add the 6 lights that we were kind of anticipating, more than likely we'd have to increase the structural poles because I can't say that the existing lighting that's there now, I believe there are 3 in that block only. I don't have a committed memory now, but when we looked at it, I want to say there were 3. And they're on opposite. One's on, I think it's 2 on the east side. Correct me if I'm wrong, and 1 on the west side, I believe, in that block. And again, it may or may not fall in the where if you see the rhythm that's created by the lighting structure, it may not fall in within that rhythm or that pattern that'll be created. Likewise, when we work with the lighting manufacturer, he provides the engineering. They too work with the lighting, we'll say the manufacturer of the poles to make sure structurally they're sound enough to be able to withstand the wind loads and everything that accompany it. So I would say if you're going to use your existing lighting, we wouldn't attach to those. We just basically look at all new structural poles for the system, keep them independent.
I think one last thing for this group to do, and I think it's kind of an opinion difference, and I think we should probably sort of just get a sort of not to be official with this, or do we feel, what do we think would have more impact on our project? Would it be adding the concrete with the pavers between the 2 intersections, which are going to be concreted and pavered either way in either idea? Or do we like having continuity of the individual light poles, 1 block north and 1 block south? Which idea do we think has a bigger impact? Ian, what do you say?
Let's say do everything from on state Washington.
So concrete between the 2. What would you say, Lynn?
I think if we had,
That'd be nice.
I think it'd be really nice. I think somewhere along the way, you've got some definition in there that you've got, like, this is a whole complete package. Piecemeal it, it's gonna be like looking at
Right. Okay.
That's my.
Suze, what do you think? Okay. And Bill?
What was the either or the alternate?
So Dave had that, I think I tend to agree. He'd like to see continuity with the lighting stanchions, the $55,000. And then we also added, there probably might be some additional concrete work, but it's still, so theoretically think of them both as similar prices, right? It's probably more expensive to do the concrete, but whether we take the intersections and we concrete them and put the pavers in the middle and then have asphalt in between and then carry on continuity 1 block north and 1 block south with the decorative lighting, not the overhead lighting, but the lighting stanchions.
Right. The light stand.
Or do we go through in concrete between Jefferson and Washington and make, sort of like the intersections as opposed to having asphalt between those 2? Which of those, the continuity with the lighting or continuity with the concrete pavers? Is that a fair way to present it, Dave? Yeah, fair to you.
Yeah, basically, the intersections are going to get ornate already.
Okay.
Do we make decorative concrete in between that on the street, both intersections? Or do we forego that and carry on the ornate lighting from the railroad all the way to Stitching on State?
Well, I can appreciate the need for continuity throughout the downtown. I'm leaning more towards the concrete pavers in between those 2 intersections for consistency and continuity, even though I think the idea is great. I'm thinking ahead with the lights in the other directions, but I think maybe the focus on just the downtown, as you had said earlier, turnkey or complete, it's done. Right. So I was going towards that. Yeah. Okay.
And then, so I think that the spreadsheet as it's constructed looks pretty good according to the group. What do we, I think, I almost called you Walter again, Daryl. It's in my head.
I'll be Walter tonight. How's that?
I'll be a Walter. Way too kind to me, sir. I do not deserve that. Don't leave him on. What about a water feature? I mean, you think that's like a fountain of some kind, or is that just silly?
I think we're on a money.
Yeah.
You are too.
And I know Brad's gonna do us a solid and come in under that $200,000 number, right, Brad?
I don't see it's a necessity.
Or what other things, Dave, obviously the lighting would be the next thing you'd want to do.
Like if Yeah, if we have a buffer, so we're about 30,000 shy from being able to carry the lighting well across the finish line. If we're able to requote some of this, maybe there's an opportunity to find some, some savings in our existing quote. Because I know, like I would assume some of the quotes here are estimates. Once you start really building this out, we might be about, it could also go the other way.
I'm gonna suggest when you get to, I think you're getting to a point now where you're pretty close. I'm gonna suggest that you give us 150 to, give us $200,000 more. In other words, give us a $1.2 million budget.
Okay.
What are the things that you would add if you had another 200,000?
I think to Dave's point, you want to add that decorative lighting would be the next thing. Do we agree with that?
The decorative lighting or the
other
standard lighting?
What is
The
it?
lighting, just carrying it on from the festival.
Yeah.
Instead for,
The street lamps.
that's an additional 55,000.
Yep. What about the sail feature? Just kidding.
No.
That's about as unintentional as I can imagine.
I'm sorry, Daryl, that didn't go over very well.
No offense, it's just in,
No offense.
it's probably beautiful,
None
but.
taken.
Elsa's got one.
Who does?
Elsa.
Well, even the elder maybe.
I'm going down, what is a sale?
It's just
So
a
the
picture.
It's
Yeah.
kind of small.
It's like you put it over an intersection, it's very artsy, looks super cool. But it looks
Like a kite.
It's a,
It
yeah.
looks, Ryan, doesn't it look sort of like a kite?
Yes, like a kite, Freddie, I hear you.
A tensile structure is what it was. Structurally, I provided a good focal feature. It could, and then it had fabric attached to it to cover the intersection. But that was quite a bit of money. But it was just a overall focal feature. Actually,
There you go.
Probably so.
And Daryl, I personally like it, I just don't know that it fits, it doesn't. fit.
Sure.
What do you all think?
Well, we
about-
got one that likes it.
What do you all think about adding in benches?
I like that, I do like that, if you want to try to get people to, I think that's a nice idea.
Would only
Can I
Place.
comment about the benches?
Sit.
And for the elderly.
If I can comment about the benches, those
Yeah,
are for
ahead.
the ones that you're seeing there or that we've identified. It's for additional benches, and we say additional benches for the fact you have 4 there now within that block, and the plan was to reuse those. Our intent was to relocate them, but as we were continuing looking through Google Earth and our photographs, seeing where they were now, since we're not making too many major improvements along the sidewalk with the concrete that's there now, and they are surface mounted, it just appeared, why don't we leave them in the same locations where they are now? There was no need to move them. So within the festival block, there are 4 metal benches, I believe there are metal benches that are in that location. There's also a wooden one, but we'll count the 4 metal ones that are in some locations now that seem to work. So we felt we could use that since budget is a concern. But we also wanted to introduce, say, 4 more in the areas of the, we'll say, the bulb outs or the intersections, if there was the money was there.
Those could always be added later.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they could be, somebody could
Donate.
donate them.
So if all of us feel like this would be a really good look in the village, I guess, would you be willing to invest more in water features or additional things in this block? Or start to look on carrying this current vision out one block,
Good question.
right? If we're trying to get to 1.2, it might make sense for us to think about, I just don't want to spend money on, so we have all this stuff in one city block.
I think to carry it out. To Wisconsin.
So do we look at then the next intersection? Or does it look weird to go intersection, street, intersection, asphalt, nice intersection? That would look poor, right?
I think if we started and went to the train tracks, it'd be a good start.
We started with,
I never remember the name.
Washington.
Tracks out.
Yeah, tracks out. And then it paints kind of a vision of what all the way to Allen. You know,
So you're talking about some of the other features that he showed in this,
Like,
in this stuff, like adding some of this stuff, as opposed to picking some of the,
correct.
sort of the à la carte stuff here. I
Yeah,
like
so,
that too.
so like adding some simple trees,
I agree.
and possibly the bump outs on Jackson.
Yeah.
Jackson.
I'm gonna ask a question to Brad, and maybe also Daryl. The two other intersections at State and Jackson, and then at State and Kai's / Mill, those are smaller numbers because that's essentially just the bulge out things, right? It's not concrete what's in the intersection.
Correct.
That's kind of what you're talking, that's what I think what Dave is referring to is, and as I think the rest of the group agrees with is, I think where we're at here, we like any extra money, we start to move outward. Like that's the acrobats. We got to the point where we got acrobats pulling out. We too much anymore there would be crazy. Let's start to spread a little bit. I think, does everybody feel like that?
I think so. I mean, as long as we're gonna spread in both directions.
We're only gonna go north. We're not south.
You cannot see my face.
I'm just kidding.
That's the
So don't you wish you could
best.
choose?
So if we added in the Jackson intersection,
Yes.
you'd probably have to raise the asphalt, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, because you have to do the parking.
You talking about paving it now, or?
No, just the parking and.
Yeah, there'll be some additional asphalt work around that area if the bulbs are installed, yes.
So the asphalt number jumped to 100,000.
Yeah, 100,000 would seem reasonable, yes.
I'm gonna hold you to that, Brad.
Great.
And then probably some trees. And that would be about it.
And that would get us to where we want
But
to
you
be.
gotta add the concrete bump outs. That's not as neat.
It is under concrete at Jackson.
And I would agree.
Oh, it is.
Does the group feel like going south before we go north probably makes sense? If we had to pick, like I think going to Jackson makes more sense than going to Kai's and Mill. You feel that? Like it's
Kind of, the tracks kind of divides it.
Right.
definitely not. But I was thinking if we had to pick between Jackson or Kai's and Mill, that I would think Jackson would be the preferred, despite my. I think that feels more town to me than.
So you can add street trees, other.
Yeah, well, if we're just gonna do the Jackson, we don't need as many street trees, yes. There are only about 3 or 4, I think, up that way.
And Derek, we want to do both, so, but I mean, yeah, preference, I guess, is the thing.
Okay.
That, I think we've given you some pretty specific things, at least this group's opinion. That's pretty specific, guys, I think we did really good work here.
As much as Brad, a question.
Go ahead, yeah.
Although we can talk more about it. Brad, I just want to make sure, so we're talking about concrete throughout now, right? Well, two sections and the center.
Between, yes, yep.
And Brad, you're comfortable with that line 7 now as your base?
Yes,
Okay. So that means concrete and 2 intersections and the block in between for those 4 lines.
yes.
That,
Okay.
that 420, right?
Yeah.
Brad,
Yeah, that's correct.
ish, okay.
Jay, you had any more?
Ish.
Yeah. Coming up, man.
The reason I asked you for, is that 1.13?
It is.
Yeah.
So I said go to 1.25. So got another 100,000.
Or would you,
What I said was, when we get to 1.50, give me 200,000 options in addition, in case we have some extra money.
And just in case.
Well, I will say this, we have some funds that may be able to be used for the concrete.
Okay.
We couldn't do it just to resurface, but since you have chosen to reconstruct that entire block, reconstructing the street might be eligible for these other funds.
well, then we say,
So what I'd like you to do is give me another 120,000 that you'd like to have.
Well, Jay, you could,
That's an option.
you could pick every other option, I think, and not see that number. I don't think.
Not the sale feature.
Without the sale feature.
No, what I'm saying is now you're talking about now is why not look at asphalt and either direction?
Sure, yes.
Right.
No, and that's probably, Diane brings up a great point.
Right.
At this point, instead of grabbing other things off of this spreadsheet, we want to start building that improved road outward. Does everyone think
Take
that?
asphalt and block
Yeah.
each direction.
Yeah.
Yes.
To take it north to the.
And with the
County or whatever that street is.
So
around there.
there's a brief. Would there be?
We don't even need to know what that is right now. We can get that number later.
No. Only on the festival tomorrow.
You want that over there, rather than having.
Another 7,000.
Yeah.
Take it apart.
Well, then, would
That
we,
would probably be 150,000.
would we recommend paving then?
Actually, to Ian's point, now what Dave said, maybe even better thought, actually, both of these guys together is, what if we took and went from, I think this is what you're saying, Jefferson to Jackson, and started looking at doing the same thing we did from Washington to Jefferson. It's 175 grand to do that ish, right? 73 for your basement.
No asphalt concrete.
Yeah, actually take and do almost 2 blocks of festival block.
I don't know if you have that much.
Well, you got 70, it was 73,000 base per block. We don't know if that's 100% correct. 73,000, $100,000 upgrade for the concrete, so that's 175. And maybe
You have 4 blocks, 3.5 blocks.
no, we're just saying is just do just instead of doing 1 festival block, maybe we could do 2 festival blocks. I mean, we wouldn't do the lighting and all that. What do you think? You say no?
No, I think you put the lighting in and you do the asphalt and all of it.
Okay, all right.
This is what.
No, it's just one opinion. Because the problem is, and
We'll get some outs, we'll get some benches and
Exactly.
Yeah.
planters and things and stuff like that.
because you can't do the overhead lighting, right? You can't do that over 2 blocks. It's gonna be what, 180 grand to do both. Yeah, you're gonna run into, okay.
I think you get the asphalt, additional 150 we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, I
You're not
mean,
gonna get it.
And if there's
And
big
even-
festivals for 2
Right,
weeks.
and even if we're able to update the parking to the north of the train tracks, because right now it is angled parking, but having more defined, whatever our parking layout's gonna be, carry that more. You know what I'm saying? Like, then we can have one side parallel, one side, actually,
So that solves that other problem we have anyways.
You just had a discussion about, I don't know if you guys fair, to flip the angle parking on the opposite side.
yes.
Have you made that call? Or you made that recommendation?
Yeah, I guess, what's the group, I mean, I think if it's arbitrary.
I
Just
understand.
ask Daryl first.
Yeah.
Hey, Daryl,
Yes,
would it be, and this goes to, Brad too, could we flip the angle parking and the parallel parking on either side? Does it matter?
I don't think it matters in my personal opinion, I don't think it matters in the festival block that we're speaking, the area between Jefferson and Washington. I do see it, even though I do respect the conversations and the discussion about the block between Jackson and Jefferson, the need for parking and on that side in particular. But that's the side that poses the most challenges, if I can reiterate again, because not only is it flush pavement, but it's only 3 feet wide and there are only car stops merely that block it. But if you're able to restructure it and I'm not sure, Brad would have to lend conversation to that if they're going to grind down, build up, and maybe remove all the concrete then and build it up, or grind down, as well as widen that walk. To me, going into your downtown area, you need something wider than a 3 foot, 4 foot wide walk. So I think by doing parallel on that side, it does give you the flexibility, I think, and allow you to pull, maybe gain a couple more feet to widen that and give you that broader approach that you may need as you transition into the overall core district area.
We're worried about the traffic pattern that shifts on the festival block one way and then gets to the next block and shifts. a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
We have two business owners in the room and they both have businesses on the west side of the street.
Got you.
I think probably.
So
both-
noted.
Both would probably prefer ankle parking on that side of the street, so they have
I
more.
understand.
But I understand what they're saying too. It's just a mess really right now. There's nowhere, there's no good answer.
So
Yeah,
if we,
I agree.
if we could put the angle parking on the west side of State Street, right?
That's the other side?
That's what, yeah, that's what yours-
That's this side.
That's your side.
Sorry.
Flipping it with what the renderings show now.
Yep.
And from a safety standpoint, literally feel like it's Russian roulette every time I pull off 10%.
Or Washington. Turns out Washington.
Good stuff.
So that would help. One real quick thing, we skipped bollards, whatever. So we kept it as, let's get through it and then come back.
Oh,
Do we
that's
think
right.
we should add them back in?
I think we're at our limit, aren't we?
Well, and well, the question I think he's asking is, what if the priority is pushing the asphalt north and south or adding bollards? Good question. I think that's what we're asking. That answers the question.
I say asphalt.
I think they asked me.
Because I think it allows us to redo the parking.
Yeah.
Right, doing the asphalt allows you to do the parking, which I think needs to be done.
I think too, if you got older asphalt and you're starting to patch that in and you got that, and
Yeah.
it's kind of tacky,
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
know, to a nice spot and.
Did you guys get that from us? I think we're pretty hard and set on expanding the asphalt north and south after we sort of, to get to your extra money. That's where we think we would rather see.
Yeah, so that's where you are with that, and Josh just added the.
Oh, we did. Thanks. Thank you.
You know, back to.
It's not easy to take 31,000 out.
We got no easements either.
Hey, we're good.
Good day, bonuses. Hungry better, coming.
I'll write it. Very good.
What'd you say?
I'm just saying. I think that's no easement, so there's no way.
Just want to be digging it. Okay. Do we feel pretty settled, guys? I think we've done a lot of heavy lifting today. A couple things. And Karen? Do you have any other thoughts? Sorry. Are you good? What do you think?
Overall, I think it's great. I'm in the minority. I'm not a fan of the concrete festival block, but if by doing that, we get, I think I missed this part of the conversation, that we get some sort of additional funding, then I guess it's great. I think it's not as important as the lighting, and maybe some of the other ideas. I think it's fine, but I mean, for my personal opinion, I would probably have scratched that line item. But I think everything else is great. I would love to see concrete, by Keys and Mill, but that's because it's close to our shop. So, but I'm fine with that.
Phase two.
The idea of getting benches, maybe getting the business community involved and maybe sponsoring benches or donating benches, maybe putting a little plaque on there, generously donated by Stanley Machining or whoever, might be a fun way to get the community involved in the project and make them feel like they're a part of it. Same with maybe art sculptures. Maybe there's some way to down the road, get some of the local businesses to sponsor some of those features.
Yeah. I like the art. I think, Karen, you bring up a really good point, and I think that the more art that we bring into that downtown space just adds that sort of kind of, remember Hampshire is trying to go after that Geneva feel, that sort of quaint and quality and nice. And I think art, like Karen brings up, is right in step with that.
So if the.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Karen.
I also think that if you, being the business development committee, we're looking to bring businesses in. And I think if businesses come in and they see established businesses investing in these local projects, that's just one more nice thing, as a testament to how much we care.
Karen, that you bring up a really great point. And actually, my origins in volunteering was in fundraising and sponsorship. What do you think a reasonable contribution from a business to a project of this? Just, I mean, are we talking a couple $100, talking thousands? What do you think? What interest does a business have in sort of participating in projects like this? It's hard for me to put my brain around.
Yeah, that's something we'd have to think about and flesh out from a pricing structure. You know, I think it depends on the size of the business and the impact that it might have, but it's important for local businesses to show residents and visitors that they're invested.
Okay.
It's just a possible revenue stream, you know.
Yeah, and I think they could be good allies, and I think that's, you know, one of the things is trying to find ways to build those private, public sort of partnerships that sort of, you know, benefit both groups. So I think that's really actually wise sort of note. So we should definitely bear that in mind.
Being
Ryan, this is,
you're involving the district, school district with it. You've got building, which is a very high caliber thing in Hampshire High School. There could be projects for those students that could be done in the
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's, there were elements of planners here. I'm wondering if the garden clubs could get engaged, you know, with saying, hey, we've earmarked locations as part of this designscape that is kind of yours. And
It's a great idea.
You know, be engaged with, and
Yeah.
it's another way for us to add greenery to the overall streetscape.
Okay.
An idea like in those landscape areas, and you know, within the parking, you know, like those middlescape areas, if a garden club could take that over and own responsibility for planting whatever seasonal flowers might be there or some color, that would be really cool too.
Absolutely. Maybe we can give them a couple $100 for some mums when they ask for it too. So, we failed on that not too long ago.
Mom?
We're getting better, Karen, I promise. We're getting better. So we have had a very, very productive 2 hours, guys. That was outstanding. I think though, I do want to make mention is I am going to write up a report out of this meeting because I think it's important, basically with some of our ideas. I'll consult with you guys. I want to send it to you guys. I want you guys to take a look at it, sort of make sure I've captured it. I then wanted to deliver it to the village board. Because I think the conversation, that's why I wanted them here tonight, to sort of have them here, because it'll be a different conversation. Not bad, it's just just be different. And so I really want them to hear our voice. I'd like beautification, also some opinions on that we've done a lot of work towards this end. I mean, it's been our focus for many years. And so I will commit to you, I'm going to write a report ahead of next Thursday's meeting, but I'd like to get your opinions on it. I want to send it out to you guys ahead of time. Just tell me if I'm missing anything. And I just want to make sure that we effectively present our.
So we can get that back by about 1 o'clock Tuesday, so we can get it in package.
Yeah, I'll definitely do it before then.
Should we
So
have
maybe
it,
even on Tuesday.
should we have it as coming on behalf of all of us?
What's that?
Should it be coming on behalf of all of us?
Yeah, it will be a beautification, a business development commission / beautification, streetscape opinion. It will come from the group. That's where I want everybody's opinion.
Towards that end, and not to put you on the spot, Michelle, but is there anything in terms of the plan? This is the first time I think that you've seen it. We had a beautification meeting like a week or two ago. Do you have any comments or input or thoughts that you might like to contribute based on what you've seen tonight?
I mean, I love the festival idea. I love the lights. I'm really happy with everything. I can't think of anything specifically that I would be like, oh, we need to add this, because I think they did a wonderful job.
I just wanted to see if it's good. Good. Thank you.
And I promised the picnic benches that are going down, they're gonna be gone, so. Just need a vaccine. I'm purchasing more tables. I'm purchasing different tables.
With all the benches, all of the picnic tables and.
I like going through town.
I think it really makes the town friendly.
We're gonna keep more tables, but I'm working on some bistro tables, and then we'll take those picnic benches and put them in the back underneath the tent area.
You've done a good job.
Hey Jay, what is the timeline from today?
So we'd like to take this before the village board next Thursday.
And then what,
Assuming the village board approves it, then Freddie has about a month to write the grant, and it'll be submitted to Springfield, and then we would have approval by the end of the year. And then we can start bidding and probably be in construction early spring.
Okay.
Actually, I don't think weather matters much on construction these days, so probably after the first of the year. Freddie, is that about right? After the first of the year, we should be spending money? Well, let me correct that. We can go into final design phase and specs once approved, right?
I think that, we will have an approval no later than, at least the first stage of their approval process, no later than December 31st. I would say it's apt to be early spring when we can start spending money, just based on what the department is doing right now and the staffing level. But we certainly would, I would think, be under construction by mid to late spring.
Awesome.
And we have 24 months to complete the project.
Do we think the overall project timeline will be exhaustive? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Probably ask Brad.
Yeah, Brad, Daryl.
Yeah.
Do either of you know, just estimated timeline from project start to completion?
Yeah, I would say this is, and I can fine tune it, but it's probably going to be a 3 to 4 month process. It's pretty detailed. There's a lot of work that's involved. So by the time you start with the underground improvements and get to the end and complete restoration landscaping, it's going to take all of that.
So wouldn't it be great for us to start or Memorial Day weekend, right? Kick it off as being this.
It would be nice.
That might be a little
That's a little ambitious. That would be a nice target to set.
But Labor Day.
Labor Day or 4th of July. Well, Coon Creek, let's hope we have Coon Creek. I would think we would next year. Okay. Everyone, thank you for participating this evening. Does anybody have anything else they want to add before we adjourn? Anything? Daryl?
Yes.
Thank you. You were amazing. Sorry about calling you the wrong name a couple times.
I'll be Walter. It's cool.
It's always
kinda like the name.
appreciated. Freddie, we look forward to you putting together a whiz-bang, amazing grant that has everyone down there saying yes, yes, yes. And to our commission and Jay and Josh, and as well as Michelle, thank you for joining us. At this point, I'd be open to entertaining a motion to.
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you all very much.
I've never done that.